James Edwards seemed like the perfect husband and father, with a picture perfect family and a successful career. But behind closed doors, he was living a double life, one that would ultimately lead to the brutal murder of the very people he was supposed to love. What drove this seemingly devoted man to destroy his family? The shocking truth is darker than anyone could have imagined. The Edwards family was the epitome of success in the small town of Bellevue. James Edwards, a charming and ambitious businessman, had everything one could want: a loving wife named Claire, two beautiful children, and a successful career that allowed them to live in a luxurious home. Their life appeared flawless, and they were often seen at community events, admired by friends and neighbors alike. James and Claire's relationship was the envy of many. He showered her with affection, and together they raised their children with the utmost care, always prioritizing family time. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, trouble was brewing. James had become increasingly distant in recent months, a subtle change Claire couldn't ignore. The late nights at work, the unexplained absences, and the sudden disinterest in spending time with her left Claire feeling confused and hurt. She brushed it off at first, attributing it to stress from work, but the distance between them only grew. James's cold demeanor made her question what was really going on. What Claire didn't know was that James was hiding a deep secret. At his office, he had become involved in a passionate affair with Natalie, a younger woman who worked as his secretary. Their secret meetings and stolen moments were filled with lust and excitement, and soon, James began dreaming of a life where he could leave his family behind and start fresh with Natalie. The affair was his escape from the pressures of his domestic life, but it came at a great cost. James was torn between his obligations to his family and his desire for a new, carefree existence. Little did Claire know, the unraveling of their family had already begun. As the weeks passed, the tension in the Edwards household only grew. James's affair with Natalie became more intense, and his emotional and physical distance from Claire was impossible to ignore. Claire had always prided herself on being a loving and supportive wife, but lately something felt terribly wrong. She noticed how James would come home late, often with a distracted look in his eyes, as though his mind was elsewhere. The small gestures of affection, once so common in their marriage, had all but disappeared. Claire's concerns deepened when she began noticing his phone disappearing for hours at a time, and he became defensive when she asked him about his whereabouts. One evening, Claire decided to confront James, hoping he would offer some explanation for his strange behavior. She asked him if there was someone else, but James quickly brushed her off, assuring her that everything was fine and that it was just the stress from his work that was causing him to act distant. But Claire wasn't convinced. She knew her husband better than that, and something inside her told her that the truth was much darker than he was letting on. Determined to uncover the truth, Claire began secretly following James, watching his every move. One night, she trailed him to his office, hoping to catch him in a lie. As she peered through the office window, her heart sank. There, in the dimly lit room, was James with Natalie. The two were laughing and talking, but what struck Claire most was the way they were touching. It was clear they were more than just colleagues. James was in love with her. Devastated and betrayed, Claire knew that confronting James immediately was not the right move. She needed evidence, and she vowed to get it. But little did she know that the truth would soon push her family toward a tragic, irreversible fate. The discovery of James's affair shattered Claire to her core. As the days passed, she struggled to process the painful reality of what she had seen. She couldn't bring herself to confront him yet. Instead, she focused on gathering evidence, determined to prove beyond any doubt that her suspicions were true. Claire spent hours searching through James's belongings, going through his phone and email, finding damning messages that confirmed the affair. Each revelation chipped away at her trust and made the weight of betrayal feel unbearable. James, on the other hand, was becoming increasingly agitated. He knew that Claire was suspicious, but he couldn't bear to face her accusations. The guilt that had once plagued him now turned into anxiety, knowing that the truth would eventually surface. But even as the pressure mounted, his feelings for Natalie only grew stronger. Their secret relationship had become more than just an escape. It was a new world he was willing to sacrifice everything for. Natalie urged him to leave Claire, to start fresh with her, and the idea of running away with her began to consume James's thoughts. The more he thought about it, the clearer the solution seemed. If Claire knew the truth, she would never forgive him. His children, too, would be a complication he couldn't deal with. There was no simple way out of this situation, no way to leave his family without repercussions. Desperation began to take hold of him. He couldn't bear the thought of facing the fallout of his actions, so he turned to the most drastic option of all, eliminating the source of his problem, Claire, and anyone who might stand in his way. The twisted idea took root in his mind, and James knew that in order to truly be free, he would have to destroy everything he had once loved. The thought of killing his wife and children chilled him, but his resolve was firm. This was the only way out. The night James had been planning for weeks had finally arrived. Claire, unaware of the danger lurking so close to her, had gone about her evening routine as usual, preparing dinner for the family. The children were playing in their rooms, and the house was filled with the normal sounds of everyday life. James had arranged for a business trip that would keep him away, leaving Claire alone with the kids. But in reality, he wasn't going anywhere. He had parked his car a few streets away and was quietly waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Under the guise of business, James had prepared himself for what he was about to do. His mind was clouded with a mixture of guilt, anger, and a twisted sense of relief. As he slowly approached the house, his hands trembled, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that surged through him. He had made up his mind, and there was no turning back. With a quiet click, he opened the back door and slipped inside. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, felt eerily silent as he moved through the darkened hallways. Claire was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself, unaware that the love of her life had just crossed the line from husband to murderer. James stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her, his heart pounding in his chest. Then, without warning, he lunged at her, brandishing a weapon he had carefully chosen for its silence. In one swift motion, he struck Claire, her scream silenced by the overwhelming shock of the attack. The children, frightened by the sounds of their mother's struggle, tried to run, but James was already there, each movement calculated and cold. He did not hesitate, each life snuffed out in an instant. The once vibrant home was now a chilling crime scene, a place where innocence and love had been destroyed. James staged the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong before fleeing, leaving behind nothing but horror and an indelible mark on his conscience. The discovery of the Edwards family's brutal murders sent shockwaves through Bellevue. The town, which had once admired James and Claire as the perfect family, was now gripped with fear and disbelief. The police were quick to arrive at the scene, their initial assessment pointing to a possible home invasion gone tragically wrong. The house was ransacked, valuables were missing, and Claire and the children's bodies were left in a state that suggested a violent struggle. It all seemed to fit the narrative of an outsider committing the crime, but something didn't sit right with the investigators. As the days passed, detectives began to notice small but significant inconsistencies. No forced entry into the house. The timing of the attack seemed too precise, and most importantly, Claire's recent suspicions about her husband's behavior came to light. She had been gathering evidence of James's affair with Natalie, and the detectives soon learned about the tension between the couple. The more they dug into James's life, the clearer it became that there was more to this story than a random act of violence. The investigation quickly shifted focus, and soon the affair became a key point of interest. The detectives uncovered emails and text messages between James and Natalie, all revealing a deep emotional attachment and secret plans to leave Claire and start a new life together. The motive was now apparent. James had murdered his wife and children to eliminate any obstacles to his new life with Natalie. But the most chilling part was the cold calculation that went into the murders. As the authorities closed in, James and Natalie were found trying to flee town. In a final attempt to escape justice, they were arrested, and the truth about the family's tragic demise became public. The town was left in shock, grappling with the realization that the man they had once trusted had committed an unimaginable crime. James's perfect facade had crumbled, leaving behind only devastation and unanswered questions.